We have our waking consciousness, we have dreaming consciousness, and ultimately we have superconsciousness. State of consciousness where we're dreaming in this world and thinking that our bodies, our personalities, the life that we're leading, not only is that very real, is it very engrossing to us, but that is the ultimate reality. And so that miasma comes over the mind, over the consciousness, and according to how deeply immersed the soul is in that delusion of Maya, the stronger the ego is. So the question comes, how do we begin to work our way out of it? Now, all of these mechanisms are driven ultimately by desire. Basically, God has created this world, as Master said, for our education and entertainment. And then he wryly said, but how few are either educated or entertained. The more we get engrossed in this reality, the more we think that this is not only real, but the ultimate reality, the more then we're subject to the waves of ups and downs of delusion. And so most people live their whole lives. But according to basically a long, slow spiritual evolution, the soul begins to hunger more and more strongly to return to our original state of Satchitananda. And as that hunger becomes strong, then we begin to replace the desires for being in this world with the desire to be free from the delusions that hold us in this world. And that process takes on an increasing, one might say, momentum and intensity. And we had a very dear friend who was a long-time disciple of Anandamoyi Ma and lived with her for many years, a Western woman. And after 5 or 6, 7 years of living with Ma in her ashrams, traveling with her, Ma said, it's your karma to go back to America to get married and to have a child. And she said, oh, Ma, I don't want to do that. And Ma said, well, it's your karma. You need to fulfill that in this lifetime for your own freedom. And she said, oh, Ma, can't I stay with you? A little like Lahiri Mahashaya in the Himalayas with Babaji. Oh, Babaji, can't I stay with you? No, it's your dharma to do this. So Ma said, no, go back to America. And she was saying, oh, but I want to stay with you. Ma said something very interesting. Better to live in the world and long for the ashram than live in the ashram and long for the world. See, it's all dependent on where our desires are, what we want in the deep sense of our soul. Master said that we always have, the real prayer is not when we sit, that's an outward prayer, or when we sit quietly and begin the prayer before meditation and so on. That's one kind of prayer. But Master said our real prayer are those tapes that run in the subconscious or in the background of our mind. Oh, I want this, I want that. Please, let me have this, please. And the more those prayers, those subconscious or semi-conscious desires are for things in this world, that's what holds us in this world. The more gradually as we evolve spiritually, the more those prayers become, I want you, Ma. I want you, Divine Mother. I want you. I want to be with you, Master. However they might play, but gradually they become the yearnings of our heart direct our direction. So what you aspire to is actually much more important than what your present state is. Because what you aspire to is the direction that you're headed. And gradually, as that becomes more and more refined, that momentum takes place. Krishna addresses this in the Bhagavad Gita, which I'll read from. This is from chapter 16, and I'll read the second and third shlokas. He's talking about the qualities of someone who yearns for truth, or the sattvic person. He said, harmlessness, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, disinclination toward fault-finding, kindness to all, non-covetousness, gentleness, modesty, not calling attention to oneself, steadfastness of purpose, radiance of character, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, absence of malice, absence of self-conceit. These qualities, O descendant of Bharata, are the endowments of those who are divinely inclined. So, as our soul begins to evolve, first of all, there are kind of two ways to go about achieving the ability to live with these qualities. There is something I might call the Ben Franklin way. Ben Franklin was a famous American in the early centuries of the founding of America. And he was a very, very dedicated, wise, very fine person. But he had a list of 13 qualities that he felt were admirable. And every month he took on one of those qualities and tried to concentrate on it. So you could take these qualities and use the Ben Franklin method, freedom from anger or any of the qualities that were listed, and try to live according to that. And that's a very good starting place, because where our mind is directed, where our aspirations are, that is where we're headed, where we're going to go. So to aspire toward these qualities is a very good thing. We're going to, as I said, have people taking vows, and basically these are the vows of those who are seeking God. These are the qualities of those who are seeking God. So to consciously work on them, to consciously pray for them, to consciously ask God's blessing to help you develop those qualities, that is one way of achieving this. As I say, let me call that the Ben Franklin methodology. But there's another way of achieving it. See, these qualities arise spontaneously when our consciousness becomes more sattvic, when our consciousness rises. And so, rather than just trying to achieve this quality and that quality and the next quality, if we concentrate on focusing on God, on giving ourselves ever more completely to God, the essence of renunciation is the dissolving of the ego. And so if by everything that we can do, that is the desire of the heart, is to dissolve the ego. Meditation, of course, is absolutely necessary. We won't get there without meditation. We've been given wonderful, wonderful techniques of meditation that raise the consciousness, that begin to allow us to control the reactive process which drives the desires. And as we control that, naturally the mind begins to withdraw, and we begin not to have to affirm I want to live in the world but not of it. We just naturally do. And these qualities develop spontaneously. And so as we develop that higher consciousness, we don't need to make a list and practice them. Harmlessness, truthfulness. When our consciousness raises, we have no desire. In fact, we have a strong disinclination to ever harm anyone. We have no desire to do anything that's untruthful. These qualities simply, the opposites of them just drop away, like the flower drops away when the fruit begins to form. And so that just drops away. So Krishna sums up really the best methodology, I would say. This is a better method than the Ben Franklin technique. He says, this is in the final chapter, again, hear now my supreme word, the most secret and sacred of all, because you are dearly beloved to me. I offer it now for your highest benefit. Absorb yourself in me. Be wholly devoted to me. Worship and bow down to me alone. So yet shall you undoubtedly reach me. This I promise you faithfully, for you are dear to me. So the Ben Franklin methodology works, but the Krishna methodology is much better. So for us, the real answer is to give ourselves ever more completely. Try in our thoughts, in our actions, in our words, constantly to keep turning our mind back to God, so that back to Master in devotion. And as we do that, these qualities will arise spontaneously, and their opposites, any of the worldly qualities, will begin to drop away, because they're no longer, they cling to us because we want them to cling to us. They also cling because of karma, and there's some old momentum. But nonetheless, basically, they're drawn to us by the fact that we're attracted to them. As we are no longer attracted to them, then we end up, let's get that thing off. As we are no longer attracted to them, they just drop away, and we end up being really wanting nothing other than God alone. And we will take various vows, as I said, but each of the vows starts basically with saying, I know that the purpose of life is to seek God. I know that the goal of life is to find God. I know that the only purpose of my life is the search for God. And those are the vows of renunciation. Those are the vows of those who want to dissolve the ego. And if we just keep concentrating on the positive flow, on being in tune with Master, on being in tune with Krishna and the light, all these things will just develop spontaneously. And so it's easy to conceptualize. It's a little harder for many of us to do, mainly because we're fighting against old patterns and old habits. But those too drop away. So cling to the light, cling to Krishna, cling to Master. And as we do that, all of these qualities will develop in us, and we don't even need to keep a list. They'll keep their own list for us. God bless you.
Well, good evening, friends. I'll also share a few words. It's so nice to be here with our spiritual family in Pune, and there are people who have come from a distance as well, as far away as Spain even, and so Calcutta and other places. So I'm going to just share briefly now what Aditya had started speaking about, this new renunciate order, the Nayaswami order, that Swamiji was inspired by Master and Babaji to create. And it's important to understand that in the past, throughout the world, both in the West and in the East, in lower ages, in Kali Yuga, renunciation was taking on from the outside. It was assuming, well, I will wear this habit, I will wear this brown robe, I will go into the Himalayas. And the form, because Kali Yuga was the age of form, the form was what took precedent. But as Swamiji says in this book, A Renunciate Order for the New Age, and we have seen it ourselves, you go to some of the great monasteries in Europe, and they're empty. There's 2 or 3 old monks or nuns living there, but you don't feel any vitality or any spirit there. But that's part of what Master's mission was, to revive and living a spiritual life in every day. And that's why, again, we refer to Lahiri Mahashaya. He wanted to stay up in the Himalayas with Babaji in that band. But Babaji said, no, you must go back to the world. You must go back and be a model for men and women who are struggling with worldly responsibilities, to show that the highest states of spiritual attainment are still possible. And so rather than just putting on the garbs of renunciation, Master gave us a different way. It's as though we have, we have several doctors here. Dr. Mansi will be blessed as an acharya in a little while. Well, if someone wants to become a doctor to help and serve others, they don't just say, okay, I'll put on a white robe, a white shirt, and I'll put on a stethoscope and carry a little black bag, and I'm a doctor. No. You have to first study the medical teachings, but more important, you have to practice. And through practice, by working with hundreds and hundreds of patients and serving them and helping them, you become a doctor. Well, it's the same with a renunciation. First, you have to study the teachings, our different, the philosophy that Master brought. And then you study the techniques, but then you have to practice the techniques. And when you practice the techniques, if you do it sincerely, if you do it regularly, it awakens within you the state of consciousness where you long for ego transcendence. You long to rise above the little self with all its petty preoccupations and worries and anger and whatever, all the things that we all do that are part of the ego. But by practicing this life, Swami says in this book, renunciation is not about life denial, world denial. It's about God aspiration. And that's what Master brought. And in a sense, I'm coming to understand that the Nayaswami order is a natural extension of Master's path, whatever stage you may be in it. And in the book that we refer to, A Renunciate Order for the New Age, Swami says very clearly, you don't have to be a member of Ananda to be part of this order, but you do need to be drawing from the ray of inspiration of Yogananda, because that's the source. He's our carrier wave. And to the extent that you go deep in his teachings and receive Kriya initiation, practice it, go deeper in your discipleship, go deeper in your, just trying to remember God, not just mentally, not just as a technique where you're doing your japa and saying your mantra, but as a living reality that you're calling on Master, that you're saying, I want you to reveal yourself every moment. That's renunciation. Because by doing that, you just, as Jyotishji has been saying, the attachments and desires of the world just don't seem that important. In the vows that we'll do in a little while, this is the first one, the first stage. There's 4 stages. There's the pilgrim vow, the tyagi vow, the brahmachari vow, and the Nayaswami vow. But really, in this first vow of the pilgrims, it says it all. I'll read just a few lines, and we'll have those taking this vow repeat this later. But the vow says, Swamiji wrote these, I will offer up all material desires for purification in the fire of divine bliss. So you're saying bliss is really the culmination of all these other little desires that stand in the way. Then we say, I will offer up all attachments for purification in that cosmic fire. Desires and attachments, this is what keeps us bound. And then finally, one of the last lines is, I will offer the fruit of all my actions and labors to thee alone. So giving up desires, giving up attachments, and offering all that we do to God. This is the essence of renunciation. And the more we can live this, whether you're married or single or householder with children or whatever it may be, this is the essence of it, that you just say, and I will give these up. And the practice of meditation and the practice of Kriya Yoga helps you to see more clearly those areas that you are ego-bound. And then you say, oh, this isn't making me happy to always have to get my own way. This isn't making me happy. I give that up. And little by little, everything falls away until all there is, and really whatever color you wear, whatever vow you take, ultimately it's just about standing naked before God and just saying, I give everything that I am to thee. And that's the essence of renunciation. And the forms, the vows, they're benefits, they're aids along the way. But most important of all, and no one is limited from this, is that inner self-offering. That's the essence of renunciation, and it's the fruit of practicing our path and our teachings with deep sincerity. So we're very honored to be here with all of you tonight. We're very honored to be part of this ceremony, and we're very honored to have Guru Bhais who are living such beautiful lives of service and devotion and self-offering to God. We're very blessed. God and Guru have given us the path to freedom, and we share it with one another, and we will help bring God's light into this troubled world. So thank you for the steps in your own life that have brought you to this point.